first panel, which is to talk about the global outlook and evolution and revolution of media. I think we saw from Steve King's opening presentation that there's a huge explosion of what's going on, and certainly what appears to be a somewhat challenged outlook for legacy media, even if we think legacy media is a term that actually exists any longer. I'm not sure it does. But I'd like to introduce the moderator of our next panel, and he will introduce his guests to talk about the latest global outlook in media. It's my pleasure to introduce Casper Schlickham. He's the Chief Executive Officer for EMEA of Xaxis, based in London. So please welcome him. Thank you.
I'm being joined obviously today by some fabulous panelists. I think I tweeted over the weekend that it's a rock star panel, and I don't think it gets better than this actually for a panel in this industry. Just for fun, we've decided today to arrange the panel in order of the Lumascape. For those of you who don't know what the Lumascape is, it's basically a flow of the industry. So we're going to start with Tim Gentry. Tim is the Vice President of, where is he? Global Revenue Director of the Guardian News and Media. Apologies. Thank you. All right. You know each other so well. Coming on next is John Stoneman, Vice President of EMEA for Pubmatic in London. Representing publisher technology, obviously. Next we have Nigel Gilbert, who is VP Strategic Development for AppNexus EMEA, and representing demand side technology. And finally, but not least, Francis Ralston Good, who's Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer at PhD London, representing the agencies on the back side. Before we kick off, we'd love to sort of understand who we're talking to. So, could we first of all just ask everyone who's a brand or a client to put up your hand? Okay, there's a little smattering of brands and clients. Publishers? Right up. Publishers, okay. Technology, the bit in the middle. Go on, okay. And journalists, interested other parties. What everyone else does. Okay, great. Perfect. So look, we're going to jump straight in because we don't have a huge amount of time. Obviously the topic for today is to talk about the revolution that's happening, or the evolution perhaps, in programmatic and automation, which is changing our industry. So actually, I figured it would be worthwhile starting with Nigel, who's one of our experts in this space, certainly on the demand side, just to give us a quick sort of overview about what he sees and understands as this automation, what it's really all about.
No small feat then, on Monday morning, just define automation and programmatic in about 30 seconds. If I was asked to write a Wikipedia definition of what I would say programmatic is, I would say very simply it's the application of data and technology in the process of media buying and selling. If it wasn't for the multitude of data points that were being created now, programmatic would have less of a significant part to play. Technology is usually built to solve problems, to solve challenges. It's not necessarily built when there's no problem to begin with. I think the challenge that people were having was there's too much wastage, too much heavy lifting during the media planning and buying process, checking creative, building tags, and no ability to use data.
Okay, so it's all about technology. You said once in a blog post that business strategy and operational understanding have yet to catch up with what technology can do today, let alone where it can take the industry in coming years. I thought that was very interesting because it seems to imply that somehow, despite all this technology we have available now, we're doing something wrong, perhaps. Is that...
Well, I mean, the adoption of technology, I think, is always one of the most challenging things because, of course, if the technology is brand new, most organisations won't have individuals in silos that actually know how to operate it. It's actually kind of unreasonable for us to expect that's the case. My job is to contract software to large buyers and sellers of advertising. And at the same time, we have to make sure that there's an understanding of the strategy that they're going to use to implement that. The goals and objectives and milestones that company has, how are they going to gauge success? And unfortunately today, probably 6 or 7 times out of 10, most large organisations are not equipped. So that is a big challenge, yes. I think strategy probably more than resource. People think they should be doing it, but they don't know what they should be doing.
Okay, well, we're going to come back and talk a little bit about the way that the industry is structured and embracing all of this technology we have now. But John, you also, on a blog post you wrote, talked about programmatic advertising is creating mountains of data, but it's also burying publishers in data. And Nigel talked about the importance of data in this new technology-enabled ecosystem. What's your sort of take on all of this from a publisher point of view?
So I think Nigel makes some really good points about the data side of things and how important that's becoming for the marketing ecosystem. From a publisher perspective, it's about understanding all the things that are happening within their website and then trying to make good decisions. And for me, that's what programmatic is all about. It's making good decisions at the right time. It's something that humans can no longer do because there's so much information out there, and you need to use the computers to make that happen. But the computers can only do so much. They can only make the decisions that we program them and tell them what to do. And so while they are busily working through all of these billions of impressions and making fantastic decisions about all of the different creative that can be used and all of the profiles of all the people that are visiting the sites, somebody's got to interpret that, and we've got to make it easy for people to interpret that, because at the end of the day, publishers are there to create content for consumers and to make it compelling, and at the same time they're there to make money to enable that content to be continued, and they need people to be able to do that go-to-market part of the process. So if we don't make our systems really human-friendly, then we're just going to end up with a whole bunch of optimization that ultimately goes nowhere.
Tim, you actually are a publisher.
Yeah.
From your point of view, how would you respond to that? I mean, is that something you're seeing in your business?
I think that we've worked hard over the last 5 years to develop teams of experts. So probably the biggest challenge of the sort of long list of interesting topics is less about the capability and how strong the technology is, but more about how we use it. I think it's quite interesting that perhaps what we've seen over the last 5 years is the debate has moved much more from technology to trust, perhaps, and it's perhaps less about the capability and what one can do with the technology, and more about who's doing it and how they are doing it.
So I noticed on the agenda for today we've got I think someone from Google talking about small data or little data, which I sort of like the sound of. I mean, there's all this big data stuff. Is it a red herring? You talked about the capability of the technology sort of being the leading force. I mean, is there too much data?
There's certainly a lot of it. I mean, I think The Guardian sees, in terms of data points on its audience, 45 billion data events every month. So that in my world is big. But not too much, because I think we have the people and technology in place to make sure that we're able to leverage it and help to drive business.
But what sort of people have you got looking at that? Because I think one of the biggest challenges that we have at the moment is you can bring a load of very clever data scientists to the party, and they can analyse data in a certain way. But then if they can't communicate out to the media world, then you're going to reach another impasse. Or you can bring a whole bunch of media specialists that are well versed in Soho lunches, but if they can't understand data, then again these two worlds are just colliding. So again, the computers are left not really being able to operate effectively because you're not bridging that gap.
I think that's a great place to bring Francis in, actually. So, from an agency point of view, how are you responding to this? I mean, this world of technology, data, everything's changing, right?
I think it's interesting from the agency perspective, because you guys within our organisations usually sit within an ivory tower and actually churn the machines. But my observation is a lot of the stuff that's coming out is incremental, and what I want and what my clients want are big leaps. And I can look at pages of attributes and I can hire data scientists to look at it, but I'm looking at improvements in funnels. And my challenge back to you guys actually is more around the great leaps. I'm interested in great leaps.
So I'm interested, what's holding those great leaps back from your point of view? Again, I'm sure we'll come back and talk about this quite a lot today, about the structure of our industry perhaps, but I mean, what from your point of view is holding?
I think we're fascinated with ourselves. I feel like we're in a model too forward actually when it comes to the world of programmatic. We all behave like it's the future, but I actually believe the future is more in the artificial intelligence space. So once we get into general artificial intelligence or super intelligence, a lot of these creative decisions that we're talking about, adding the human back into the machine, is going to evaporate. I do think that artificial intelligence is going to start helping us make creative decisioning and these great moves forward. So I think we're in the baby steps of this whole space actually. We're just overly fascinated with it. And that's why I think we're fascinated with the incremental benefit rather than the great.
Well, I think it's also a good observation in the sense that you saw the data earlier that Steve King put on the screen. We would broadly agree with those percentages, and it would show you that programmatic today is approximately, I think it's at 30% of display. That's about right, because I think certainly pan-Europe, possibly even globally, the performance element of display is about 30%. And usually that's where technology tends to get brought in first, because it's where the biggest problems exist. Agencies don't have enormous problems buying large insertion orders from The Guardian, let's say. That process is well constructed. But if you want to, as a publisher, monetize the 2 billion impressions you haven't sold in a yield-effective way, or you want to drive performance for 50 of your largest customers, that's very challenging. It's very challenging to do at scale. But where I think the next wave of growth, certainly in programmatic terms, comes from, is where it penetrates the workflow and the ability to, again, to extract data from the core parts of agency trading, the deals, the large-scale relationships. And so it doesn't move into that area where you need to hire another 50 quants, to tell you the way the world works. Steve put it up there as well. The differentiations that agencies have here is content and creative, and much less so technology. So I think there is a small catch-up that the agencies have to do, but actually now it's coming into the, you could effectively sort of think of it as the agency publisher sweet spot almost. Good content, and effective advertising placements will win.
But there, again, there's a problem, right, with all the various different ecosystems that people are trying to create. So one of the points, again, which was made earlier was, we can now bring all this data together and do all these amazing things. I mean, the reality is you can't, because everybody's looking after their own piece of data, and there's no way they're going to share it with each other.
So the walled garden is the enemy.
We haven't got one here.
We can say what we want.
Yeah, exactly.
It's big feeling.
But unless there is that holistic view across everywhere, then the vision of the agency is not going to be successful.
Optimised within all gardens. That's where you end up. So you have someone who's expert in Facebook and someone who's expert elsewhere, but you use those joint.
That was the other stat said that 65% of the agency spend, or his partner spend, was across 5 countries. That's consolidated.
So, different ecosystems, different ways of doing things. Francis, just if I could stay with you for a moment, we spoke when we spoke on the weekend or on Friday about sort of preparing for this panel. You made a really great point about the fact that actually, in the UK and the US, we sort of talk ourselves into this thing being very sophisticated and it's all there, whereas actually, your perception, which is what I very much agree with, is actually there's a huge difference in how this is distributed, how it actually comes to life locally, especially in more developing markets. So that, what's your point of view on that? How do you deal with that?
Our observation in the UK is that the legacy, hate that word, media owners are the ones who are innovating at the fastest rate. They're the ones standing on burning platforms. They're the ones who are actually working extremely hard to embrace the technological space. Guardian being a case in point, but also Sky in our local market are offering up solutions now which are much more engaging, much more relevant to our clients. That's not the incremental piece. It is about joining the dots across different platforms as well. So in a way, the disruption, which we talked about as well, the disruption agenda, which some of these global players have, does sometimes seem to disruption for its own sake. So they can own that kind of narrative. But my observation is it's the moment now for local markets to convert that technological advantage with media partners. And also to have a healthy ecosystem within each market, because also I personally don't want a world which is dominated by global players within my local environment. I want something which is specialist and relevant to my consumers and specialist and relevant to my clients as well.
Okay, so Tim,
Yeah, I think it's interesting sort of as one operates across different markets and sees the pace of change in those markets. From a cultural perspective, then I think the key challenge is to try and spot the opportunities where one can take advantage of that to perhaps, you might be playing catch up in the US, but once you have caught up in the US, then that might enable you to be cutting edge in the UK and absolutely leading the market in Australia. So it's just about trying to join the dots up between the different centres.
There's something different. We always think. I've been working in that Nexus now across the EMEA for about 4 years. One of the biggest jobs has been to try to find out what would be the blockers, let's say, to the adoption of technology, or what's the
in a market.
And so you do spend time thinking about how important the UK is. 55-60%, I think, something like that of all programmatic spend.
And what are some of those blockers? What do you see as some of the wherever they may come from? Some of those blockers.
Yeah, I would look at it very, very quickly in two ways. The first one is the consumer behaviour in the market. It has to define what the opportunity actually is. The UK is highly fragmented. We switch everything all the time. We're quite difficult to find. But that being said, we do create a lot of data points. We've got 7 daily newspapers of consequence. You can tell me which one. There's only probably one of consequence. But we do still have 7. Other markets tend to have 2, maximum. We'll switch phones, mortgages, cars, banks, utilities every day if there's a better offer on. In Germany, people would very rarely switch anything like that. In actual fact, they might drive the same car or the same brand of car their whole life. Their circulation of build, I read recently, was actually going up. So these are not difficult consumers to find. So as a result, you actually have less of a requirement. So consumer behaviour is the first one. Infrastructure you put alongside that, like connectivity in France is much better, therefore mobile video consumption is much higher. In the UK, you walk down Oxford Street and lose connections as recently as a year ago. And finally, behind that, I think that the way that the market works is the other side. So again, take Germany, because I think it's where the biggest difference is. The way that the advertisers pay agencies, the fees are much higher, and they demand a much higher level of transparency as a result. So they're actually incentivised to spend as much as they can with as few partners as possible, with very complex CPM and rate structure. It's very difficult and also slightly arbitrary to put that into a DSP. You're not really achieving anything. You're just creating work for yourself. Whereas in the UK, where agencies sort of live and die by how good they are, and compensation isn't necessarily as good, technology offers a good opportunity. You can get an advantage.
There's also the ability for the technology companies to proliferate out from their centre, right? And their core generally tends to be somewhere in the US. So the further out they get, the kind of less the shockwave.
Are you finding that you're having to, again, as a technology vendor who works across multiple markets, are you finding that you need to adapt your technology to the way that the markets work, or try and bend the markets to the way your technology works?
We don't need to adapt our technology, because I think, broadly speaking, publishers across the world want to do the same thing, and our technology is there to help them do that thing. I think it's the business conditions and the types of deals and the business ecosystem that you're trying to sell that technology into.
Commercial structure.
Exactly, absolutely. Because the point I was going to Nigel's one is there is a media way of doing things in each different market, and it has 100 years worth of buying that surrounds it, and you're trying to break into that buying cycle. And if you blend in beautifully, then you'll be successful. And if you're trying to be completely disruptive, and the further you are away from your headquarters, the harder it's going to be.
Okay, changing tack slightly. I think one of the sort of bugbear of mine is the fact that we're talking still here about advertising and marketing, not just about, hopefully just about technology for its own sake. And so creativity, I think, is a very, very important part of this whole ecosystem, which I think sometimes, I think neglected is the wrong word, but we ignore here in our sort of programmatic bubble that Francis talked about. I've sat on 2 panels in the last month, one of which was about how can creativity help save programmatic, and the other one was about how programmatic can help save creativity. Francis, which way around is it?
I don't think it matters. That's the answer to that. You said a boring question. Because it depends what question you're asking at the end of the day, as we all know. And you can either identify, you can go with a hypothesis and test it through understanding consumer behaviour across multiple touch points, looking at attributes, realising you're not actually targeting the right audience. or vice versa. So as long as you start somewhere and complete the circle, I think the risk is actually being myopic and actually not looking at it from both angles. So as a planner, I would always look at it hypothesis first and then look at audiences.
So if you take this sort of data-centric opportunity, the audience-centric opportunity that programmatic provides us, are you finding clients starting to embrace with that sort of data-first, audience-first, not TV spot first kind of mentality?
Well, I think that's back to the future as well. I mean, media particularly is meant to be a data business. From its inception, it's about understanding how people consume media, and it should be a data-based business. That's what it's about. And somehow, over time, we've lost that narrative and point of difference by becoming overly obsessed with the brand story. That's what we bring to the party. So I think that's what we've always been.
And the technology companies have got an enormous part to play in creative.
Just about to last week.
And I would argue that we're making it incredibly complicated. If you think that Frances has got a new rich media format that she wants to get to Tim, then there's about 5 of us in the way of making that happen. And we've all got our favourites, we've all got the ones that we're partnering with, we've all got the ones which we prefer, and that just makes the ecosystem virtually unplayable, right? I mean, we have to standardise, we have to agree what those standards are, and then everybody has to sign up to it. Otherwise, the money's not going to flow through, and those efficiencies that programmatic's supposed to be delivering just won't flow.
No, that's why I think
the wrong planner though, sorry to cut across you, but you know, in the future, the media planner should be talking equally eloquently about the technology they want to employ in a particular campaign or to meet a certain game. And personally, as a planner, again, I react against these in-aggregate deals which bolt certain technologies on certain media buys. Because again, if you're focusing on the consumer and the brand need, then you might need a different partner altogether. And that is
So is the media planner who just buys media dead?
I think they should be.
We'll come back to industry structure. That's our last little section.
I want to how we helping with this.
How are you helping with this complexity?
What I don't like about that question is the concept that they're mutually exclusive. Why is creativity how well you can take over a homepage, or how well you can build an advertorial, or how well you can load a rich media spot? I mean, it's certainly one part of it, but creativity by definition should be coming up with a creative solution to a problem. So I'll take a different tack, because these two are doing a good job of debating the opportunity there. We've had partners who have figured out a way to ingest signals from digital TV platforms in the Netherlands to get an idea of how many times or what frequency the word Mercedes will appear. Therefore, somebody is probably watching a program about Mercedes or about a car. They'll ingest that, then they'll retarget Mercedes prospects or clients from their website while they're looking at their Facebook page on an iPad.
As long as it's not an article about Mercedes recalling cars for safety concerns.
Fair, so you can exclude keywords too. But I would argue that that's extremely creative. I would personally have gone full of that, because I didn't understand that you could actually do that. In the Netherlands, digital TV penetration is high enough to do that. That is highly creative. It goes way beyond personalisation of a banner saying, you looked at this furniture website, come back. I mean, that's actually where creative becomes annoying. That's where somebody's become so creative that it's an issue for them. So I don't like the way they're mutually exclusive. It's a new type of creativity that we now see.
I don't think they are remotely mutually exclusive, because I think there are beginning to be huge swathes of work where creative technologies are being combined with more traditional ways of thinking creatively around content, for example. So, two bits of our business which do a lot of work together are Guardian Labs, our most creative aspect, our branded content agency, with Guardian Response Plus, which is our published trading desk. And those two things in combination can create wonderful moments where there's the engagement with an audience to tell a story that persuades, plus those moments of activation that the technology can create around following that audience more fully through the funnel.
Good, well, I know Frances is a judge of the Cannes Innovation Lions this year, so I'm sure we'll see lots of interesting award entries given the fact that we'll agree with creative at some point. Let's just spend a couple of minutes talking about mobile, because again, Steve spent a lot of time this morning talking about mobile. Tim, if I can actually start with you, please. So mobile, I mean, Is it just a channel, or are we asking the wrong question?
I think it's fascinating to think of the challenge that we face in keeping pace with the consumer, because sometimes we can look at our business sort of two ways and think, well, I think this year about 20% of the Guardian's digital revenue will be mobile, and I think that compares with the market average of somewhere between 10 and 15, depending on which market you go to. So we could look at that and think, that's very good, we're doing really well, we're ahead of the market. And then you sort of look at it from the consumer's perspective, and 60% of our page views are coming on mobile devices. And when we look at it in that way, then I think mobile could have the capacity to inject the same level of transformation to our industry as digital did to print sort of 15 years ago. And that is an interesting challenge to
How are you guys doing with this challenge?
So our technology is a cross-platform technology. So we believe in mobile, we believe in video, connected TV, display. Wherever it was the point that was made earlier. Wherever you can place a digital ad, our technology should be helping publishers to do that. When it comes down to the point about mobile, I think I put all of the blame on the other side of you, because we've got the inventory and we've got the technology to do it. We just don't have the stuff coming down the pipes to keep them happy.
Well, great. So there's a great question. Nice segue to Francis. I mean, is it we see the same thing within our business as well. I mean, is it a channel? Should we be investing more in mobile, or is it just are we asking us again? Are we asking the wrong question? Do people invest in Facebook because it's mobile, or because it's Facebook?
Well, they'll invest in it because it's Facebook, I believe, not mobile. Well, yes, obviously not mobile. The question about where the money's coming from, stop pretending that clients have got infinite buckets of money. I find that a bit of a frustrating question, to be honest. This is an extra lane on the highway, it's not replacing anything, which is something that we all need to recognise, because it's complementary. Formats aren't really keeping pace. Yes, there may be articles there, but the ad formats need to keep up with that as well. So it's actually useful and experience for the consumer. I feel like sometimes we're doing things to the consumer rather than actually either entertaining, informing, or educating them. So that question that you pose has multiple answers. But to return to your original point, yes, Facebook is killing it in mobile at the moment, and the cross-device proposition is really gaining ground.
I was dying to say something about mobile, because that next is all in on mobile, but we've got 3 minutes left, and I wanted to talk quickly about industry structure. So if you want to hear about Nexus's point of view on mobile, you know where to find Nigel afterwards. So we've talked a lot about some of the things that are changing, and it's very challenging talking about all these things in such a short amount of time, especially with such incredible people on stage. But we've touched a few times on the structure of the industry and on some of the things that are perhaps holding back the wider distribution of all of these technologies. The only question I'm going to ask you all, so if we can start with you, Tim, what needs to change? If you could wish one thing into this industry, to change one thing structurally in this industry, what would it be?
I think it's that we continue with the path that that's beginning to develop now, which is to genuinely collaborate and to solve problems together for the benefit of the advertiser and consumer, rather than thinking about. I think the only thing that worried me in Steve King's presentation was the term media owner versus agency arms race in technology. I don't see that at all. I think the real opportunity is where we take publisher-side innovation like the Pangea Alliance and talk collaboratively with agencies, with Francis and her colleagues in genuine partnership to see where the opportunity exists to build step change and to build data advantage. That's the work.
Technology needs to pick a side, and it needs to become invisible, and it needs to allow those two people to do their jobs.
Great, perfect, thank you.
Wow. I still have my mobile answer in my head. Sorry.
I'll tell you what, if we have time at the end, you can do both.
All right, so what's the biggest blocker? So I don't think there's anything that's really going to stop the growth of technology. I think that's inevitable. It's not really a question of if, it's a question of how. I think we've already seen that. I'm not sure anybody would question that. Steve's slide, I agree with you. It's challenging to understand why he's suggesting that. But I would say that probably only 20 to 30% of programmatic is truly being done by the primaries. A lot of it is being managed by the intermediaries. That's the challenge. People need to start up and do it themselves. And I think the gap to that is the fact that nobody's particularly good at managing their data, because if you're not very good at that, frankly, what's the point? You're taking it in-house because you haven't really got anything to target in the first place, and you wouldn't know what you were driving towards.
Okay, so data? Yeah.
I've got a bit of an existential kind of crisis point to make, which is about the uncoupling of audience and context, which deeply concerns me. Things like instant articles appearing on Facebook feeds means there's no editorial guidance around the news agenda in these social environments, and actually that does affect advertisers and advertising agencies, because it returns to the original point around a healthy ecosystem where we do have healthy media brands which service the consumer need, because by disappearing into this vertical around audiences, you could end up killing the media environment and ecosystem in which that audience is discovered and found. So that's what I think would be a barrier to us.
Brilliant. Well, my little timer here says we have 7 seconds left, so we've brought it in right on time. I want to thank my panelists. I think they've done a fabulous job explaining what's a very complicated industry to us, and thank you all for your time as well.